As scientists' warnings grow stronger, climate change has become a defining issue of our time. And Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici has a high-profile seat at the table. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi appointed her to a committee focused on the climate crisis. She's also a member of a key education subcommittee and has pushed back against proposals from Education Secretary Betsy DeVos.
We need to know this. Did you know when you rolled back the guidance that the stress of harassment and discrimination can lead to lower attendance and grades as well as depression for transgender students? Did you know that when you rolled back the guidance?
Oregon's 1st District Congresswoman joins us today to talk education, climate, and much more. From KGW News, this is Straight Talk with Laurel Porter.
Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter. Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici represents Oregon's 1st District, which stretches from Portland's western suburbs through wine country to the Oregon coast. She's just completed 6 town halls across the district, taking questions from constituents on topics ranging from climate change to stopping gun violence to the Mueller report. Representative Bonamici is here tonight to talk about issues affecting her district, plus other hot topics on Capitol Hill. Welcome to my guest, Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici. So nice to have you back here on Straight Talk.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
You have been in the House majority now since January, your first time in the majority party since you were elected. What's that been like, and what do you think your biggest accomplishment is for your district in these first 100 days?
Well, I have to say that it is an honor to serve in the majority because it is so different to be able to help set the agenda and decide which bills move to the floor, move through committee, and move to the floor for a vote. So we are finally bringing to the floor and voting on issues that people care about here in Oregon, from addressing climate change to gun violence and many more. So it's an honor.
You have been, speaking of honors, Nancy Pelosi named you to a committee, one of 8 Democrats appointed to the panel called the House Select Committee on the Climate Crisis. What's your mission on that committee?
Right. It's our mission, and yes, I'm thrilled. I'm the only member on that Select Committee from the Pacific Northwest. It's our mission to bring to Congress the best of ideas, the best practices and thoughts and procedures from around the country where we see success in reducing carbon emissions and creating good paying jobs in renewable energy, because the climate crisis is real. We are seeing the effects here in Oregon and across the country, and the Select Committee is going to be at the forefront of shaping policy and making a difference for the people we represent.
And we've already seen some action in this area. On Thursday, we're taping this on Friday.
Yes.
So on Thursday, the House passed the Climate Action Now Act. It would keep President Trump from withdrawing the U.S. from the Paris Accord on climate change. And for the first time, you presided over the House vote. Let's take a look at part of what you said.
This is about U.S. leadership. The cost of inaction on climate change is too high to wait any longer. We can protect the planet, unleash innovation, and create good jobs. This bill is an important first step.
First, what was it like to preside over that vote?
It was exciting. I hadn't had the opportunity to preside over a legislative body since my time in Salem, and it was exciting, and it was truly an honor. It can get a little chaotic on the floor, so it was wonderful to be able to call for order, and then we went through several amendments and a procedural motion, and then the vote. So it was great. I really enjoyed doing it.
The Republican-controlled Senate is unlikely to pass any similar legislation, and President Trump would almost certainly oppose it. So what's the significance of this vote?
Well, the significance of the vote, and there were some Republicans who voted for it as well, the significance is to send a message that the United States of America can be a leader in addressing climate change, which is something that we all know around the globe is a serious crisis. And I have to say that I was so disappointed when President Trump made the announcement that he's going to take the United States out of that climate agreement, because basically every other country in the world is in that agreement. So it also sends a message that we're committed to working with our international and global partners on addressing climate change. And I have to say, too, that there's flexibility. The United States gets to decide how to accomplish the goals of that agreement. And we saw the business community and many states and local jurisdictions stepping up and saying, we're going to agree to this commitment. We're going to make a difference, reduce carbon emissions, which is good for the planet, but also we can create a lot of great jobs as well.
And you've signed on to something called the Green New Deal.
Yes.
It aims to move the nation away from fossil fuels. It was introduced by freshman Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Right.
And when she announced it, she was criticized by conservatives by something she said. She said she and other young Americans think the world's going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And she was referring to a UN report that talks about the urgency of addressing climate change. What do you think? Do you think the world's going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change?
Here's what I can say. We know the science from the Intergovernmental Panel, the science from the National Climate Assessment, and we can see the effects right here in Oregon. Our ocean there's ocean acidification. The oceans are warming. We're seeing snowpacks change. We're seeing more severe weather events. We're seeing more drought, warmer temperatures. We're experiencing it right now. And what the science shows is that we need to take action. The sooner we take action, the more we can begin to make a difference. So now is the time. It's time for leadership. We're going to keep working on this and sending the message that at least the U.S. House of Representatives says the United States should be in this international agreement with the rest of the world and work together for a clean planet. You know, Laurel, these policies, they're going to affect our children, our grandchildren, and future generations more than they're going to affect me. And so we have to think about the future when we're working on this and make sure that we leave a better future, a cleaner, more habitable planet for future generations.
As you know, Republicans push back on it, saying it's too costly, it would cost American jobs, but they also say it's too broad, that it represents far-left policies, socialist policies like free health care, free college for everyone is in there. Is this policy, this Green New Deal, too broad?
Well, certainly there are many policies that are in the green. Actually, the resolution is very aspirational, but we have to think big. We have to say we need to reduce carbon emissions, we need to move to a zero-emission economy, and we need to create jobs while we're doing that. And I'll tell you, Laurel, my grandfather, he was an immigrant, but he was also a coal miner. He and my grandma came across the ocean from Italy in a boat, came through Ellis Island. He worked in a coal mine until he lost his leg in the coal mine and then went on to work for Ford Motor Company, but he died of lung cancer. We have to have good paying jobs in renewable energy, and we can be a leader. We can invest in technologies. I just got to tour this fabulous wave device that's going to help capture the power of the oceans. We're innovative as a country. We can do this. So we need to think big, we need to think bold, and also make sure that we're sending the message that people won't be losing jobs along the way. There will be good paying jobs in clean energy industries.
And you mentioned ocean acidification. You're getting bipartisan support in at least one area. Southwest Washington Representative Jamie Herrera Butler signed on to a bill funding to fight ocean acidification.
Right.
And there's been progress on this. Tell us about this bill.
Absolutely. Laurel, this is something that I've been working on for quite some time because we see how ocean acidification is affecting our shellfish industry, but also we're seeing that fishing industries are threatened. So I've been working on it, getting more information, working with stakeholders, and we just in the Science Committee moved a couple of ocean acidification bills, including my Coast Research Act, on a bipartisan basis to the floor for a vote. It will help us better understand and adapt to and prevent ocean acidification. And I'm excited about that because this is something that's going to help our local communities and our local economy.
You're also passionate about education.
Absolutely.
You're the chair of the Education and Labor Committee's Civil Rights and Human Services Subcommittee.
Yes.
And you pressed Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, we saw at the top of the show, on a number of issues during her appearance before your committee last month. And one concern you had was the administration's rollback of protections for transgender students. Let's listen to what you said in that hearing.
When you rolled back that guidance, did you know that the stress of harassment and discrimination can lead to lower attendance and grades as well as depression and anxiety for transgender students? Did you know that?
Congressman, OCR is committed to ensuring all students have equal access to an education free from discrimination.
Did you know when, sorry, I would really like an answer. Students and families need to know this. We had a mother of a transgender student here yesterday. We need to know this. Did you know when you rolled back the guidance that the stress of harassment and discrimination can lead to lower attendance and grades as well as depression for transgender students? Did you know that when you rolled back the guidance?
I do know that, but
What was your reaction to her response to your questions?
Sadly, I wasn't surprised, but I was incredibly disappointed because, as I mentioned, the day before, we had a hearing on the Equality Act, which is a federal non-discrimination law like we have in Oregon. And a mother named Kimberly told her story. Kimberly lived in rural Texas. She described herself as a Tea Party evangelical. She had a child, and the child identified as a girl, young child. And Kimberly said she, at the advice of her family, she prayed, she tried, sadly, an ineffective home conversion therapy. And then one day she heard her child, her now daughter Kai, say, "I want Jesus to take me away." And it was so touching and sad to hear Kimberly. And she said finally she realized that she had to accept Kimberly for who she, or Kai for who she was. And Kimberly left and moved to a city where Kai could be safe going to school. And she said, because her school wasn't safe, and finally she said people were noticing Kimberly for her intellectual abilities, not for her gender. And it was such a compelling story. And then I found out that this guidance was reversed so that schools won't be safe for students like Kai and other students like we have here in Oregon. And it was so disappointing, and we're following up on that to see if we can get more information about how to make this guidance go back into place so that schools are safe places for students.
I want to ask you about another education concern, something we've been following here at KGW in an investigation called Classrooms in Crisis. And we've learned that Oregon classrooms are battling an increasing problem, disruptive students creating disturbances, sometimes violent ones. Many teachers are frustrated. They're having to clear the entire room. They say this is getting in the way of learning. And some teachers are burning out. And we did a report earlier this week talking to a teacher about that. Let's listen.
I saw students in crisis that we were not meeting their needs. And when their needs weren't met with the resources that we had, they were being violent, they were being defiant, they were running out of classrooms, they were threatening the teachers, throwing scissors. We need more people in the classrooms. We need less people that are walking in and taking data for 20 minutes and then telling the classroom teacher more things that they need to be doing. And instead we need behavioral paras, we need mental health professionals.
That teacher resigned from Portland Public Schools after 7 years because she said because of that problem it became unsafe for students and for her. And she's not the only one we've heard from. We've heard from teachers saying that they're considering leaving the profession because of that. What's your reaction to that?
Well, Laurel, as someone who cares deeply about education, and I frequently visit classrooms, and thank you for the work of KGW on this issue and also our Oregon teachers who have brought this to our attention. This is a complex problem that requires all of the things that teacher talked about. Our class sizes are too big, they need paraprofessionals in there, and we absolutely need to have help for these troubled children. Kids are coming to school today with trauma and with stress, and we have to have the services there to meet them where they need it. We shouldn't have to have teachers clearing a classroom. We should have an aide or a professional who can work with these students who are suffering from trauma, or they need health care. They might be hungry. They might have gone through trauma at home. And I tell you, if we don't invest in those students today, we're going to see down the road larger investments, whether they be in the criminal justice system or in health care. So we have to address this issue, and it can start with smaller class sizes and more paraprofessionals. And I truly hope that Oregon and other states that are experiencing this can address that need, because it's not going to get any better until we do. And we're going to see more need for mental health care and more safety net services later if we don't address it now.
And we're hearing this is happening across the country. Is there anything that can be done at the congressional level?
Well, the federal role in education is about equity and making sure that we are expanding opportunities for all students and leveling the playing field. I do want to mention that we are working on a bipartisan child abuse prevention and treatment act that we plan to work on to help prevent child abuse. But at the federal level, there are many issues to deal with the underlying causes, whether they be making sure we're not cutting SNAP benefits or child nutrition programs for kids who are hungry, making sure we're addressing the desperate need for affordable housing. There are a lot of kids who come to school from a backseat of a car or sleeping outside because their family's homeless, and oftentimes because of health care or lack of access to health care or addiction, but oftentimes just because families fall on hard times and they can't afford housing. So getting at the underlying causes is something that the Congress can do, but we can also make sure that we are fully funding programs that help, whether they be through the Every Student Succeeds Act or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, Title I, the dollars that help address the needs of schools with high populations of low-income students. So there's a lot we can be doing, and these are issues I'm very passionate about because I know that the children of today are going to be the leaders of tomorrow, and it's a good investment to invest in education.
And we'll continue to follow it here on KGW. I did want to touch on something that a lot of people have brought up at your town halls, the Mueller report, and a lot has happened this week about it. So let's talk about that. Attorney General William Barr was grilled by the Senate over his summary of the Mueller report into Russian interference in the 2016 election. Then he refused to testify before the House Judiciary Committee on Thursday. Barr had said in his 4-page summary to Congress that Mueller's report showed no obstruction of justice and no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. Mueller himself said this week he disagreed with Barr's handling of the report. It did not fully capture the context, but he didn't say it was inaccurate. What's your take on the Mueller report? Do you accept that it says there was no collusion between the President Trump campaign and Russia?
The Mueller report raises more questions than it answers. What Mueller said was that the report did not exonerate the president. And I agree it does not exonerate the president. And I have to say about Attorney General Barr how deeply disappointed I was to hear him say and use the phrase no collusion, which I know and he knows and the nation should know is not a legal term. He was parroting the Trump administration's talking points, and I found that to be completely unacceptable. He was acting more as President Trump's lawyer when he is the lawyer for representing the Department of Justice. He doesn't deserve to be the Attorney General.
I think he should resign.
I do think he should resign. We need someone who is unbiased in that position, and he is not. And with regard to the Mueller report, again, there are so many questions that are laid out, especially in the obstruction of justice. There were at least 10 instances that could give rise to obstruction of justice charges, and we have to get the information about all of those because we need to know, Oregonians and Americans need to know that their president is making decisions based on what's best for the country, and we're not there.
Senator Elizabeth Warren is calling for President Trump to be impeached, and there is increasing pressure on Pelosi and on the Democrats. Do you think President Trump should be impeached? I
share the concerns of my constituents who say that no one is above the law, and I agree. We're continuing to get all of the facts because if we bring up an impeachment resolution, which I would support, we want to make sure it's successful and sends a message that the nation does not have confidence in this president.
How do you respond to Republicans who say Democrats are just overreaching, they're just intent on targeting President Trump?
That's just not correct. When we have example after example after example, we know, for example, all of our intelligence agencies have made clear Russia interfered in the 2016 election. Has President Trump called them out? Absolutely not. So we don't know that this president is acting in the best interest of our country. We have people who allegedly have security clearances that are debatable. We don't know if that's a safe issue. We have lost our standing around the world in so many areas. And I share that concern that my constituents raise to me in the town hall meetings and in emails and in phone calls on a daily basis.
Congresswoman, we need to take a break right now, but we'll have more with Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici in 2 minutes.